You do not wake to church bells. You wake to a heat that has no morning in it, a red that leaks under the shutters before any rooster. The air already tastes of pitch and old timber, and something sweeter underneath that you do not want to name. Down the lane, a baker's cellar has been breathing sparks for an hour, and nobody important has noticed yet. The city that felt so ordinary yesterday, cramped, crooked, familiar, has already decided it will not survive the week, and neither the king nor his god will come down the street to carry you out. Give this city one look before it burns, and you will understand why it never had a chance. The houses lean over the streets like tired men, whispering. Top floor almost touches top floor across the lane, so close that a cat could cross from your roof to your neighbor without ever meeting the ground. It is all timber and lath and plaster, the walls stuffed with straw and horsehair, the beams painted in tar to keep the rain out. Every surface you touch is dry, hungry, ready. The summer has been long and rainless. The wells sit low, the ditches show their cracked black mud. Wood that should be damp is not, and along the river, the warehouses hold everything that loves a flame: pitch and tar and oil and rope, hemp, coal, brandy, sulfur, timber, stacked to the rafters. The city has spent decades building the most perfect kindling in Europe and calling it home. And yesterday, none of this frightened you. Yesterday, this was simply where you lived. You knew the smell of it, the way you know your own hands, the sour reek of the open ditches, the fish market, gone soft in the heat, the tang of horse dung baking on the cobbles, the wet coal smoke that never fully leaves a London sky. Even in September, you knew the sounds of it too, the iron rims of cartwheels on stone, the bells stacked one parish over another, the shouts of the water carriers, the constant low murmur of too many people living in too small a space. It was cramped and filthy and loud, and it was yours. You would have said the greatest danger in this city was the plague that had emptied whole streets the year before, or the thieves in the dark lanes, or the bad water, or the winter. You would never have looked up at your own roof and seen a coffin waiting. That is the cruelty of the ordinary. It hides the thing that will kill you inside. The thing you stopped noticing years ago. If you want to keep walking into the parts of the past that were never cleaned up for the school books, follow this channel and stay a while. Nobody meant to do it. Someone had meant to bank the oven properly last night. Someone had planned to sweep the ash into the yard and forgot. Someone had expected the wall between the houses to hold. These are the small, ordinary failures that a city survives 1,000 times, until the one morning it does not. So the fire begins the way most fires begin, without an audience. A baker's oven in Pudding Lane, not fully cold, the embers finding a stack of fuel piled too close, the heat climbing a wall it was never supposed to climb. By the time anyone smells it, the ground floor is gone. The family upstairs wakes to smoke instead of light and climbs across the rooftops to the house next door, because the stairs are already a throat of fire. That is how the first ones live, by leaving everything and never looking back. That is also how the first ones die, the ones who go back for the strongbox. Now the fire is loose in a street of tinder, and there is no morning left, only the color of it. If you are poor, you wake in a single rented room with one door and one narrow stair, and a family breathing around you. Between you and the fire there is a plank wall soaked in tar, and a landlord who will not thank you for the damage. If you are rich, you wake behind stone within your own walls, with servants to shake you, and horses in the yard, and a name that can hire a boat before the water rises with the price of fear. The fire does not know the difference yet. The fire will teach you the difference by nightfall, and it has days to do the teaching. This is not a thing that comes and goes in an afternoon. On the first morning, it is only a neighborhood problem, a bad fire near the bridge, the kind the city has weathered before. By the first night, it has eaten its way to the river and set the warehouses alight, and the whole waterfront becomes a wall of flame that turns the underside of the smoke a deep and living orange. On the second day, it climbs into the heart of the city and stops being news and becomes weather. On the third day, it reaches for the grandest buildings and the places people swore were safe. And only on the fourth does it finally run out of things to burn. You do not get to panic once and be done. You get to wake each morning to a fire that is closer than it was when you slept, and to understand slowly across 4 days that there is no version of this that ends with your street still standing. Here is the first thing that would kill you, and you would never even see it coming. The city itself was the weapon. There was no water where you needed it. London drank from wooden pipes buried under the street's elm trunks, bored hollow and laid end to end. To fight the fire, men broke the pipes open to fill their buckets, and the water that should have flowed for hours drained into the mud in minutes and left the pipes dry for everyone downstream. The river was there, but the river was low, and the tide was out, and the fire started a street back from the water, where no bucket chain could reach in time. So you stand in a line passing leather buckets hand to hand, and the water that reaches the flame is a cup thrown at a furnace. It hisses and vanishes, and the wall it hit is already gone. The tools you have are the tools of a smaller world. Hooks on long poles to pull burning thatch down squirts like oversized syringes that throw a gallon and then must be refilled. Leather buckets that leak, stitched by hand and shared between whole streets. They were built for one house, one chimney, one accident. They were never built for a city eating itself. There is no fire brigade coming, no company of men in coats, trained for this, no engines that matter, no plan that anyone practiced. There is only you and your neighbors, and whatever you can carry, and the growing certainty that carrying it is pointless. You fight for a while because standing still feels like dying. You throw water, you swing a hook, you drag a smoking beam into the street, and then you watch the wind take a spark over your head and light the house behind you, the one you were protecting your own from. And you understand that you have been fighting the front of a thing that has already gone around you. That is the moment most people stop fighting the fire and start fighting, only to get their family out. It is a quiet moment. It does not look like surrender. It looks like a man setting down a bucket and picking up a child, and the wind. The wind is the second thing, the thing you notice too late. A dry east wind had been blowing for days, and it takes the fire and stretches it. Flames do not creep here. They lean and jump. The wind carries burning fragments through the air and drops them on rooftops, streets away. You watch a house catch that has no fire near it, and you understand that the fire is no longer walking, it is flying. Sparks land in the tar between the roof tiles and bloom. The fire crosses gaps that no man could cross, and starts again fresh and hungry, a whole street ahead of where you thought it was. You are not being chased by a line you can outrun. You are being surrounded by a thing that arrives from the sky, and still the men who could stop it hesitate. The only real defense against a fire like this is older than water. You pull down the houses in its path, you tear a gap in the city so wide the flame has nothing left to reach across and it starves at the edge. But pulling down a man's house means paying for it, means answering for it. The Lord Mayor comes to look and sees the smoke, and says a woman might piss it out, and goes back to bed. And by the time the order comes to pull the houses down, the fire has already reached them, and you are demolishing a street that is already alight, and the wind is throwing the pieces further. Hesitation is not a small sin in a fire. Hesitation is how a lane becomes a city. If you think a burning street is the worst of it, wait until you feel the moment the fire stops being many fires and becomes one. Because that is coming, and there is a name for it now, that nobody in that year had the word for a firestorm. When enough of a city burns at once, the heat begins to make its own weather. The fire pulls air into itself so hard that the wind bends toward the flames and feeds them. The roar is not the sound of burning, it is the sound of a thing breathing. Sheets of flame stand taller than the church spires. The heat reaches you before the fire does, and it reaches you as pain. The air itself becomes something that hurts to breathe, scorching the inside of your nose and throat, so that every gasp is a small burn. People die in the streets, without a single flame touching them, killed by air that has turned to something the body was never built to take in. The stones grow too hot to stand on, and the soles of your shoes begin to soften. Birds fall out of the sky, their wings caught by the rising heat. Iron hinges and locks glow, and warped glass runs like water melts and pools on the ground. The sound alone would break you, the roar of the flames, the crack of stone splitting, the crash of roof after roof, falling in the screams that start and then stop too suddenly. Somewhere a warehouse of pitch goes up all at once and throws a column of black smoke that stands over the city like a second night. Somewhere a store of gunpowder catches, and the ground itself jumps. Somewhere people who laughed at the first warning are now on their knees in the street praying to a sky that is raining fire on them. And the great cathedral, the one everyone believed was safe, St. Paul's, stands on its hill above the city, and the people carry their goods inside it, because stone does not burn, and God would not let his own house fall. The booksellers of the district fill the crypt with their stock. The whole trade of a neighborhood locked behind stone doors for safekeeping. Then the scaffolding on the walls catches, for the church was being repaired, and the fire climbs the wood into the roof, and the great lead roof begins to melt. Molten lead runs down off the building and pours into the streets in bright rivers, so that the very stones of the churchyard steam the stone, splits in the heat, and cracks like gunfire, and pieces the size of men fall inward. Everything inside is gone. The books, the goods, the faith. That stone would save you. The safest place in the city become an oven with the door locked from the outside. If a city burning from the inside holds you the way it holds me, leave a like, so the next person who cannot look away finds it too. And this is where the fire teaches its cruelest lesson, the one about who gets to leave, because escape was never shared equally. If you have money, you have already gone. You hired a cart, while carts could still be hired, and watched the price climb through the day, from a few shillings to more than a working man earns in a year. You loaded your silver, your papers, your jewelry, your account books, and you left through a gate before the crush. Or you paid a boatman on the river 3 times, 4 times, 10 times the fare, and floated out onto the water and watched the whole burning shoreline from a safe, cold distance with your wealth dry at your feet. If you are poor, you are still here. You own too much to abandon and too little to move. Everything you have fits in your arms, and your arms are not enough. You drag a bed through a street of embers because that bed is the most valuable thing your family owns, and you cannot make yourself leave it. The roads out are a solid jam of carts and barrows and people carrying doors and chairs and crying children, and the old who cannot walk fast enough. The gates in the old wall become bottlenecks, where the whole city tries to pour through, openings built for a quieter age. And the river, which should be the great escape, is a wall of boats, all wanting the same water, each one riding lower, under goods that people would not leave behind. And watch how the 2 mornings end. The merchant reaches the far bank and turns to look at the city. He is leaving, and his ledgers are dry, and his family is counted, and his losses are large, but survivable, because wealth is a thing that can be moved ahead of a fire. The laborer reaches the same river and finds it full, and finds the boatman taking only those who can pay, and stands on the mud with his bed and his children, and nothing that will float. The merchant will write letters about his ruin from a comfortable room in the country. The laborer will not write anything at all, because he cannot write, and because no one will ask him what he saw. Disaster reveals rank quickly. The fire is the same for everyone, but the door out has a price, and the price is the only thing that was ever really unequal. Wealth still tries to look organized even as it flees. It packs neatly, it hires cleanly, it leaves in order. Poverty leaves the way it lives all at once, and in the open, with everything it owns on its back and nothing underneath it. If the fire had come for your street, would you have run with empty hands and lived or died reaching for the one thing you could not leave behind? Tell me down in the comments. And when there is nothing left to blame, you blame a face that is not your own. A city in terror looks for a hand that lit the match. Rumors move faster than the flames themselves. That it was the Dutch, that it was the French, that foreigners are throwing fireballs through windows, that this was no accident, but an invasion. And so on top of a burning city, you get a hunting one. Strangers are dragged from the crowd and beaten. A man carrying bread is nearly killed because someone thinks it is a case of grenades. A foreign woman is set upon for the chickens in her apron, mistaken for something worse. Fear makes everyone look guilty, who looks unfamiliar. The fire took homes, but the mob went looking for meaning. And meaning is more dangerous than fire, because meaning wants a body. You learn something ugly about your neighbors. In a week like this, the same people who passed buckets beside you at dawn are by dusk dragging a foreigner through the mud on the word of a stranger. Fear does not make people kind. It makes them certain, and certainty in a crowd is a kind of fire of its own. A man will confess to anything when enough hands are on him, and a crowd that wants a guilty party will believe the confession, because believing it is easier than believing that a city can simply burn for no reason at all. That is the last thing the fire steals from you before it is done. Not your house, not your goods. Your sense that the people around you would hold together when it mattered. For 4 days, the city burns. It moves west with the wind, eating parish after parish. The sky over London, so full of smoke that people 20 miles away read the glow at midnight and think their own town is alight. The falling ash drifts for miles and settles on villages that never felt the heat, and then the wind drops. That is the truth of it in the end. Not the buckets, not the squirts, not the prayers. The east wind that drove the fire simply eases, and the king's men at last blow gaps in the streets, with gunpowder wide enough that the weakened flames cannot cross. The fire does not surrender. It runs out of city and out of wind at the same hour. And in the gray, after you climb to any high place and look, and there is no city there. There is a black field, where a city used to be, still smoking, still too hot to walk on in places. The cellars glowing like buried coals for days. The shape of streets survives only as lines of ash. The churches are open skeletons. Thousands upon thousands of homes are simply gone, and with them, the small, ordinary lives that filled them. The workshops, the signs, the doorways, people knew by heart. The king promises a new city of brick and stone, one that will not burn so easily, one with wider streets and proper waterworks. And it comes in time, a cleaner, grander London rising out of the ruin. But the people who own nothing to begin with do not get rebuilt. They scatter to the fields outside the walls and live in tents and shacks through the coming winter. And many of them never come back into the record at all. History remembers the new dome on the hill. It does not remember the family that carried a bed through the embers and lost it anyway. There are other cities in other centuries still waiting to be survived, and every one of them is here on this channel when you are ready to walk into the next. For weeks the ground stays warm. Men who go back to dig for their buried money find coins fused into lumps in cellars, still too hot to enter, and the smell of burning clinging to the stones long after the flames are gone. The official count says almost no one died. A handful of names, a servant, a watchmaker, an old woman. But that count only holds the dead who were grand enough to be missed. The poor who lived alone, the old with no family, the strangers passing through, the ones swallowed so completely by the heat that not even bone remained to be counted. These do not appear in any total. A fire hot enough to melt iron and run glass does not leave tidy bodies for a clerk to number. So the city tells itself that it was spared the worst, because the worst happened to people. The city was never counting in the first place. The fire did not consult your rank before it started, but the way out always did. And if you had woken that morning to the red under the shutters and the taste of pitch in your teeth, the only question that would ever have mattered was not whether the city would burn. The city was always going to burn. The only question was whether you were the kind of person the boats would wait for.
God, it's taking everything. Get out, the bridge is next.